everybody. Welcome to Buckeye Preview number 1 of 2012, even though it's week 6. Sorry about that. I'm Tyler Carey. Let's get right to the big story from East Lansing. Ohio State went up north to the state we all hate to take on the Spartans. And it was a close game throughout, but this bomb from Braxton Miller to Devin Smith, 63 yards, was the difference as Ohio State pulled away with a 17-16 victory. Ohio State had over 380 yards of offense. 315 of those yards came from Braxton Miller himself. He is having an outstanding season and would probably be a Heisman candidate if the Buckeyes weren't banned from going to a bowl game. We could have had that bowl ban last year, but if we'd have done that, we wouldn't have gone 6-6 and played in the Gator Bowl. Thank you, Gene Smith. Other scores from around the Big Ten, up in Lincoln, Nebraska, 22nd ranked in the country, beat Wisconsin 30-27. They came back from a 27-10 deficit. The Buckeyes play Nebraska this week. Wisconsin plays Illinois. Northwestern moved to 5-0. They defeated Indiana 44-29. They're looking very sharp to start the season. Iowa rebounded from that heartbreaking loss to Central Michigan, 31-13 over Minnesota. The Gophers getting their first loss of the season. Penn State, we all thought they were going to roll over and die in light of the Jerry Sandusky scandal. They have won 3 games in a row, including 35-7 last week over Illinois, and 1 game out of conference. Purdue beat Marshall 51-41 at home. Now, as we take a look at the Big Ten standings, in the leaders division, the 2 top teams, Ohio State is now ranked 12th in the nation. Penn State is right behind them. They're both 1-0 in the conference. Unfortunately, neither of those teams can play in the Big Ten title game, both for very different reasons. So it is still very early, but technically Purdue is leading the leaders division without even winning a single conference game yet. Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois follow. They have each lost once in conference. Over in the Legends division, Northwestern currently has the lead over everybody. They are now ranked 24th. They are 5-0 after beating Indiana this week. Nebraska and Iowa tied with them at 1-0 in conference. Michigan has yet to play a conference game. They're 2-2. Minnesota and Michigan State both lost in conference last week. Obviously, as you can see, this is not a stellar year for the Big Ten Conference, but remember this. One of these teams, whether you like it or not, is going to play in the Rose Bowl and likely get their butts handed to them by Oregon or USC, but they'll be there, and you can't take that away from us. Although, part of me wishes they could, because this is pretty bad. Let's get right to the game preview. Nebraska and Ohio State, one of several ranked versus ranked matchups from around college football this week. Really a great week as South Carolina plays Georgia, Texas plays West Virginia, even Notre Dame plays Miami, although that's not ranked versus ranked. But this is the game we're all going to be paying attention to. You all remember last year when Ohio State went to Nebraska in their 6th game of the year. They had a 27-6 lead until Braxton Miller in the 3rd quarter hurt his ankle. The great Joe Bauserman came into the game, and the rest is history as Nebraska pulled off their biggest comeback in school history in a 34-27 win over the Buckeyes. This year is very different. It is like last year, the 6th game, but Ohio State is now 5-0 and ranked 12th. And there is, of course, the factor of the head coach, Urban Meyer, who has brought Ohio State back in such a short time after what many would consider an awful season at 6-7 last year. Now, the keys to this game, I tend to look at the offense. Neither team's defense is really anything special. Ohio State defends well against the run. Nebraska defends okay against the pass. What I look at is on offense, particularly with the quarterbacks. Both of these teams have dual-threat quarterbacks that are capable of making game-changing plays at any point during the game. Taylor Martinez for Nebraska is a much different quarterback than he was last year when Ohio State traveled to Lincoln. He has completed 67% of his passes and thrown 11 touchdowns as opposed to just one interception. He's also running for 6 yards a carry and has scored 3 touchdowns. He, in his junior year, may be the best quarterback in the Big Ten thus far. You could argue that. But Nebraska has looked very sharp. They're 4-1, their lone loss coming on the road to a pretty good UCLA team. And Martinez has finally emerged as that leader that head coach Bo Pelini has wanted from him in the last couple of seasons. But on the other side, there is our savior, Braxton Miller, has been tearing up defenses across the country in his first 5 games. He has completed 62% of his passes, slightly less yardage than Martinez at about exactly 933. He's thrown for 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But the big story for him, he has rushed for 577 yards in the first 5 games and 7 touchdowns. He is leading the Buckeyes in rushing yards by over 250 yards over the second place man, Jordan Hall. By the way, Jordan Hall will not play this week. He was injured against Michigan State. Carlos Hyde will start at running back. Now, with these 2 quarterbacks, in Miller and Martinez, it's pretty obvious that whoever can deal with the pressure of a primetime stage, Saturday night football in the Horseshoe in front of 105,000 fans, is likely going to be the quarterback to lead his team to victory. Now, I don't want to sound biased here, but I think the advantage clearly goes to Braxton Miller. Again, we all remember how Miller was absolutely tearing up this Nebraska defense last year and how it all fell apart after he got hurt. I think he can do very much the same this year at home against a Nebraska defense that really is not anything special. They are 4th in the Big Ten in pass yards allowed at 188 per game, but come on, that's a pretty good day for Ohio State. That shouldn't be much of a concern. They are 10th out of 12 teams in the conference in rushing yards. And with the running threat that Braxton Miller is, that's going to spell big trouble for the Cornhuskers on Saturday night. Taylor Martinez, on the other hand, is also a very good quarterback. He is not as good a runner as Miller, and even if he was, Ohio State is allowing just over 100 yards per game on the ground. His passing ability is still not great. If you've ever seen his throwing motion, let's just say it makes Tim Tebow look good. Even though Ohio State's pass defense is second to last in the Big Ten, I don't think it will be much of a concern. Although I think it will give Ohio State some problems, but I think that Miller going against the Nebraska defense and hopefully tearing them to shreds, much like he did last year, is going to be the main difference in this game. Pay attention to that matchup, Miller and Martinez. It's truly a prime-time, head-to-head thing that we all would love to see. That's what college football is all about, seeing what may be the 2 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten face off in what will be Ohio State's toughest test thus far. All right, I'm going to be quick here. I'm going to get right to the picks for all 5 Big Ten games this week. We're going to try to do a little more Big Ten oriented this year so as not to just focus on Ohio State. Iowa and Minnesota are off this week. Our first game, Michigan State travels up to Bloomington to face Indiana. I've often said, if you look up the word doormat in the dictionary, Indiana football is probably going to be right there next to the word. Michigan State needs a win desperately after dropping 2 of their last 3 to Notre Dame and Ohio State. I think that they're going to go in and tear Indiana to shreds. I've got Michigan State in that one. Illinois and Wisconsin, neither of these teams has looked good at all. Let me tell you, I had Illinois going 8-4 this year under new head coach Tim Beckman. They're already 2-3, and they're getting worse after getting blown out by Penn State and Louisiana Tech. It's gotten that bad for the Big Ten. Wisconsin, I had them winning the leaders division, and they still might because Ohio State can't go. I had them at 11-1. They'll be lucky to win 10 in my mind. I've got Wisconsin winning this basically because Illinois is just that horrible, and it's at Wisconsin. That team up north, then Purdue. Well, the Maize and Blue have already lost 2 games after beginning the season ranked in the preseason top 10, having lost to Alabama and Notre Dame. Purdue is 3-1 with a loss like Michigan to Notre Dame. Their marquee win is against Marshall. Michigan needs a win badly. They're going to win this one, and I don't think it's going to be very close. Northwestern and Penn State, a very interesting matchup. As I mentioned, Penn State has played a lot better than we all thought. They've won 3 in a row and just have demolished the competition the last 3 weeks. They play undefeated Northwestern, who under head coach Pat Fitzgerald, who's doing a fine job up there, are now 5-0 and in the top 25. This will be a pretty good game, but I've got Penn State winning this one, mostly because their quarterback, Matt McGloin, has had great success against Northwestern over the years. Now for the game you've all been waiting for, the 21st ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers heading to Columbus to take on our 12th ranked beloved Ohio State Buckeyes. Now I got to admit, I've gone back and forth on this game several times because I think that Nebraska so far has looked like the best team in the Big Ten. They're 4-1. Their lone loss coming again to a very good USC team. Even though Ohio State is 5-0, they've shown me some concerns, especially on defense. And Urban Meyer has made that well known in his post-game press conferences. I've never seen a coach look so depressed after a win. But 5-0 is 5-0. I do think that Braxton Miller and his ability to make plays against this Nebraska defense, much like he did last year before getting hurt, added with the motivation for revenge that the players and the fans feel after what happened last year when Ohio State blew a 3-touchdown lead on the way to a heartbreaking loss up in Lincoln, are going to be the difference. I've got Ohio State winning this one by a score of 31-27. The Bucks go to 6-0 and remain in the driver's seat for the Leaders Division Championship, but they still can't play in the title game. Again, thank you, Gene Smith. Hopefully I'm right, but again, in college football, and especially in the Big Ten, you never know what can happen. Well, that'll be it for this edition. Tune in next week when the Buckeyes take on Indiana up in Bloomington. Until then, I'm Tyler Carey. Thanks for watching Buckeye Preview. Go Bucks!